One of the most strange desires that most people must have felt at some point in their life is the desire to simply not exist, or at least exist as something completely different from what they are now. This desire to not be the one who they are now should not be confused with the desire to never have been born. Rather, it's a desire that seeks to experience inexperience, a state where one does not have to deal with the complexities of their current existence. Faced with it, one can't help but start to feel anxious about existence itself. Who am I? What am I here for? Does life have any inherent meaning? Will there be any difference if I have never existed? These are certainly age-old existential questions that plague everyone's mind at some point in their life. Many philosophers, theologians, and thinkers have tried to come up with different answers to these questions, but hardly anyone has come up with a definitive answer to the question of what the meaning of life really is. For some, life is a suffering that one must be brave and courageous enough to pass through. But one can ask, if life is inherently a suffering, then why choose to suffer it? If the end is a place of pure indifference where neither good nor bad, nor joy nor suffering can be felt, then why not just get a fast ticket and achieve this eternal state of pure indifference? Many philosophies such as nihilism, antinatalism, the belief that it is morally wrong to have kids, share such ideas about life's inherent meaninglessness. No matter how much we call out to the universe to seek answers for our existence, for our undeserving sufferings, all we receive is utter silence. It's the nature of humans to find meanings and answers in things surrounding us. We have used science to understand how biology works and how different elements work. We have learned about the world outside of our planet. But one question that to this day remains unanswered is, who are we really? Years of philosophical and scientific inquiries have failed to answer this question. New hypotheses come, but are soon blown away by others. The effort of coming up with an answer to it has been going on for so long that one cannot help but wonder if this question is even worth asking. Could it not be the case that life may not really have any meaning at all, or we are but existing for no given purpose? If this is the case, then why continue this at all? But let's just say that life has no meaning. Would that really deter someone from living it? Surely some people might say this, but most people will still deny that life is not worth living. Even when we are shown all the reasons for the meaninglessness of life, the will to continue living comes to us almost naturally. One cannot but continue living. We give ourselves meaning to continue living, whether it be by the belief in a higher being or a pursuit of an artistic aim. We try to rationalize our life and all the sufferings that come up with it. But why? Why do we rationalize life? Even when humans are faced with the most gruesome and horrible tragedies, think of all the people who survived terrible hardships, or our ancestors who willed to live even in times of war, starvation, and plagues. We are our best friends, and in every situation, our instinct is to protect ourselves first. Because what is selfishness if not an extreme way of this self-preserving power? But what happens if this power runs out? Certainly, it's not the outside world that is threatening, but we ourselves become the biggest threat to ourselves. What does an average day look like? You wake up, go to work, come home, talk to someone, and sleep. And then the next day rolls on, and you repeat everything again. Every day is almost the same as the last one. You wake up, go to work, return home, sleep, and wake up again, and repeat this again and again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Nothing changes. All this continues until that one day the why arises. Why go through all this? Why this dread, fear, guilt, and suffering when one can easily end all this? The only philosophical problem that is truly serious, says Albert Camus, is this very problem. To judge whether life is truly worth living or not is to answer philosophy's most fundamental question. There are moments in life when everything feels detached and out of place. You are at a given place, at a given time, but either the environment or your present itself does not feel right. It could be the moment when you start to feel awkward in a party, or it could be when you are among other people and start to realize that your presence here is not really much appreciated. Or it could be moments when you are alone and suddenly remember your very cringy and awkward moments from the past. During such moments, everything feels strange. The only thing that feels right to do at that time is to just shut your eyes, forget about everything, distance yourself from everything, and lose yourself in nothingness. It is in these moments that what Camus calls the absurd reveals itself to us. The absurd is the gap between us questioning the meaning of life and the silence that we receive from the universe. But is this really something that most people think about? Everyone in their mind knows that life does not have a higher meaning. But still, that does not mean that it is not worth living. It is almost astonishing how people have become insensitive to life's meaninglessness these days. What could have put people in an existential crisis 70 years ago has now become a meme. Even though some may say that it is a weakness of one's character that makes them ask such questions, that indeed is not the case at all. To ask these questions about existence is the most human thing. Part of being human is to ask questions. And what question is more fundamental than this? Most of us will agree that life is painful, challenging, and not fair. But there's always a certain repulsion towards ending it. Why? Because ultimately, life is possibilities. Possibilities of changing our conditions. Possibilities of experiencing new things. When we live, we have choices. The end is irreversible. It destroys possibilities. There is no going back from it. But life is different. It indeed puts forward many challenges to us, but it also gives us possibilities. Life's meaninglessness may seem like a harsh sentence to all of humanity, but as Albert Camus would say, life meaninglessness is actually a good thing. If life does not have a higher meaning, then it entails that we are free to make our own meaning. Life, in this sense, is not just restricted to fulfilling a certain goal. We are free to make our life however we like, free to choose what will be our meaning to live. It could be to create art, or you might like to teach some kids, have a beautiful family, or you would just like to live for its own sake. Life's meaninglessness, in a sense, is a salvation of the individual and humanity at large. As philosopher Simone de Beauvoir points out in her book Ethics of Ambiguity, what is a person after all? What am I really? Am I a member of a group, or am I an individual? Am I a Christian or an atheist? Am I this or that? Simone de Beauvoir would say, we are simply both. This choice between two extreme binaries is not a choice at all. Our existence is much more complicated than putting and shutting away everything under one single label. Life, according to her, is ultimately ambiguous. Throughout centuries, people have tried to shy away from this ambiguity of their existence. How easy it is just to have a single fixed identity and make everything of ourselves on that perceived identity. These people are too afraid to consider that life can be much more complicated than this. Our existence is not confined to a certain label, and when we deny this, we are ultimately rejecting our own freedom. If, let's say, someone considers themselves as a member of a certain group and make their whole life revolve around this identity, they read only the kinds of books that affirm their ideas, they only consume everything that aligns with their beliefs. Though this person may think that they have everything figured out, they don't have to worry about any existential crisis. But in reality, they are betraying themselves by shutting themselves from anything other than their identity. They have locked themselves in their own world and have denied their own freedom. On a complete opposite spectrum, we have a nihilist who thinks that life is meaningless and it's not even worth living, though they are not wrong in saying that life is meaningless. Simone de Beauvoir argues that this thinking that life does not have meaning is in itself an act of giving meaning to life. If a nihilist thinks that life is meaningless, then even without intention, they have created a meaning for themselves. Because they choose to create a certain way of living and acting through it. Even in the bleak thinking of nihilism, humans can't help but find meaning, even if that meaning is nothingness. When we accept the ambiguity of our freedom, we are no longer restricted by the previous bounds of labels that we use to suppress our freedom. But ultimately, as she says, this cannot happen without the recognition of others. We cannot be free if we do not let others be free. It is often the case that when one asks such questions about existence and meaning, we often forget about other people. Though it may seem obvious to exclude other people from the conversation when asking questions about the existence of an individual, we should not forget the impact others have in our lives. Whether it is people that you love or people that you work with, others always play a role in who we are. If, let's say, you want to achieve something big in your life, others will always be in that process. This means that to ensure that you are free, you also have to care about the freedom of others. Will your actions in some way or other take away the freedom of others? You can only achieve your own freedom when you ensure the freedom of others. There is no other way to it. When faced with difficulties, one of the most comforting things is to get sympathy from someone. To be understood and loved is all one needs in such times. One can't trap oneself in their mind, but when one reaches out and looks through their freedom in respect to others, that is when life can open up new possibilities to us. This can only be possible when each of us respects everyone's freedom. The end is inevitable, and our existence is but a moment of our being in a specific time and place. And these moments gives us the ability to make and change things. So ultimately, life has a meaning, even in its own meaninglessness. The will to create, share, thrive, and live.